I was born in England, raised in Southeast Asia, and then went to school for as long as they let me be in it, in Ottawa.
Oh.
And I went to Manitoba when I was kind of ran away from home. And that's where you go when you run away from home. You go to Manitoba.
Churchill. Okay, I'll remember that. What I was going to ask you is, how do you think that that's informed your work as journalists? I mean, Rex, obviously you're Mr. Newfoundland, but Peter, also the fact that you've lived, many places outside of Toronto, and as we know, what do people love about Toronto? They love hating Toronto. So I'm interested in your views as a journalist.
Well, I mean, I fall back on the fact that I've lived in a lot of places, and love that fact. I really don't. I really do see myself as clearly a citizen of Canada, but also a citizen of the world. I love to travel. I love meeting people outside of downtown Toronto. Both Rex and I travel the country a lot, not just on book tours, but whenever we can, find the opportunity, because you're constantly hearing different views and thoughts about the state of the country and the state of the world. So I love that kind of movement. I've been moving all my life. My mother, when she was alive, used to brag about the number of different houses we've been in. And it was hard on kids, constantly moving, because you're always having to make new friends. But on the other side, it gave you experience and opportunity that you wouldn't have.
Yeah, two things. Newfoundland is actually the opposite. It's so homogeneous, it's an island and it's isolated. But what Newfoundland did have, we realized we either have the most felonious or the most lunatic province on the face of the planet. And as a consequence, we have to live with it, but we decided to turn it at least partly into some sort of diversion or entertainment. And I know growing up under Smallwood, I often refer to him as the pharaoh without the pyramid. Growing up under Smallwood, he was such an outsized personality in his charisma, in his rhetorical gifts, and also in the sheer concentration of power in a small place. Dominant figure, he taught you a lot about the harder edges of politics, but the Newfoundland response to it, as I said, is deeply ingrained, that you find the edges of humor that are present, or you find the little fables that you can extend. We had the first cattle drive in Newfoundland was in 1955. Joey wearing a 24-gallon hat, driving some startled horse in front of about 10 deeply embarrassed cows past Gander, which is an airport, not a ranch. And the second thing that came from it is the point that Peter brought up, and I'd really like to stress that. Smallwood, when we joined the Federation, he had a motto or a legend. He said, and he meant it. Next to life itself, the greatest gift that God ever gave Newfoundlanders was Confederation. He really stamped a national idea into what could be described as the most provincial province. And when I got lucky about 14 years ago on this particular stint, as Peter says, I've hopped around a lot, and the only way, outside of reading, I think, that you begin to experience the tremendous range in this country, range of temperament as well as geography or ethnicity, range of temperament, is to get around it. And to get some idea of the totality of this place, which is its glory, you have to have collision and acquaintance. So the local thing gave you a sharp perspective from which to look, but the broader acquaintance of journalism expanded what it was you were looking at.
Well, the other gift that Rex got from growing up and living in Newfoundland was one that I'd never experienced, and that's the gift of being able to speak in a second language.
The gift of being able to hide behind the second language.
If you noticed in the advertisements that we did for this event, we try to give everything a tagline. So we just made this up. But we said journalism in the age of celebrity. You two are both fabulous journalists. We live in the age of celebrity. And Rex, of course, you addressed this in your book, but I'm interested in both your views on this. We are in a time, of course, of I said you were rock stars when we came in, and you are. I mean, everybody's a rock star. So I just wanted to throw that out and see what Peter, I'll start with you. What do you think about doing journalism in the age where everybody's a star and a celebrity and Twitter and all that jazz?
Well, on the one hand, you're kind of flattered by it. On the other hand, it's problem. I mean, we're just journalists, we're storytellers, and nobody should look at us beyond that. And every once in a while, it's good to be reminded of that fact. You know, I can remember a couple of years ago driving up to our cottage, and I got a little carried away on the highway, speeding, and I got stopped by an OPP officer.
Imagine you got stopped for speeding. That's never happened before.
Yeah, and so this guy comes to the side of the car and he asks for my driver's license and registration. I give it to him. He looks at it. He goes, "Peter, Mansbridge." And I'm thinking, I love celebrity journalism. He looks at me and says, "We were in Scouts together." And, you know, he said where and when, and, you know, it turned out to be true. And we stood there and at the side of the road talking about the good old days of scouting for, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes, and it was quite wonderful. And there's this pause in the conversation, and he says, "So, what do you do now?" Not everybody watches television. Not everybody thinks we're celebrities. But listen, to me, it's an issue when it gets in the way of telling a story. It's nice and it's flattering that people recognize us and feel that we're important in their homes at night, and that is at times an awkward thing to kind of understand. But you know, we're just storytellers.
What about, though, the connection, I mean, the distinction between journalism and, Rex, you suggest in your book that news is not a discrete category anymore, that it's also mushed in with celebrity news, that maybe journalism, you know, as we used to think of it, isn't around anymore.
Well, there are two separate powers. If you go back far enough to, say, Eisenhower, you'd probably have the last president. Of course, he was well known, he was famous, but the machinery of celebrity wasn't as intense or as powerful. Kennedy was the first man that collapsed the bridge. If you were a president or a prime minister or a premier, you had the great prestige and charisma of special office. And I remember in the middle 60s in Newfoundland, and I'm serious, if a cabinet minister came to present you, just a cabinet minister, not the premier, people would say the day before, you know, Dr. Frecker, who's the Minister of Education, he's coming here tomorrow. And some people would dress up just to go over to present you in the hope that they would see at a distance. They weren't looking for autographs. This was the minister of the crown, of the government. It had that kind of clean, unquestioned prestige. Now, around the time of Kennedy, you had a little crossover, and then there was a very small instant in the career of Richard Nixon. And some people here, maybe 3, are old enough to remember laughing. And you remember that at one point Richard Nixon agreed to go onto that famous wall and say, in his inevitable lyricism, "Suck it to me." That was Nixon dipping his leper's toe into the water of celebrity. Then it kind of faded away, but by the time we come to Bill Clinton, you have to ask a question, and then I'll stop it. In the case of Clinton, he had the power and charisma of the presidency. But when he had his greatest strife, I often wondered whether Hollywood was coming to Washington or Washington was going to Hollywood. The conflict he found himself in fitted the narrative more of a rock star than a president. I mean, sex romps are almost de rigueur if you have a guitar in one hand. But Clinton seemed to have bridged the gap, that he could use the power of being this new modern type of celebrity, and at the same time he could go back to being president. Mr. Obama is, that's why he's a phenomenon. He not only collapses those categories, he's larger than both. He's the most distinct and individual political figure that I've seen, but I happen, of course, had the rank or status to have interviewed him.
Well, I'm not